Hello and welcome to the Our Metroidvania podcast. My name is Professor Q.
And this is Cauldrath from the Our Metroidvania subreddit and Discord.
Hi, this is Master. I'm also from there.
I apologize about my son yelling exactly when I was introducing the stream. For anybody who didn't hear, this is the Our Metroidvania podcast. In case you can also can't read the title. Cauldrath, let's introduce this game.
All right, this is the beta demo for Vernal Edge. It's got a few new things that the Kickstarter demo didn't have. Like the area has been expanded a bit. There's an arena area. There's this starting part where there's a tutorial. But yeah, it's basically a 2D Devil May Cry inspired Metroidvania.
I remember the first demo, what was it, like a year ago that they put out for this? I thought it was kind of neat that they had the little hair color change thing.
Yeah, like if you get your combo up enough, then her hair will change color permanently, and you'll I forget what the exact mechanic is, but you're able to cancel it into moves that you normally couldn't.
Oh, so similar to Valda's Story? You played Valda's Story, right?
Yeah, I don't remember the mechanic in that game though.
Oh, yeah, that was its core mechanic, is that you could cancel animations and you could unlock more cancels as the game progressed. Valda's Story is the direct competitor to this game as far as Devil May Cry style fighting games are. But we're not here to compare those two games. So what are some of your favorite things about this demo?
Well, it's obviously very combat focused. Has a bit more platforming sections, and it has more secret areas and actual upgrade. You can get health upgrades. I don't think there were any before.
So it actually feels like a Metroidvania now.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things about Metroidvania demos is that often don't showcase the actual Metroidvania part very well.
Yeah, they're usually in a starting area, and then the start of most Metroidvanias is pretty linear, just as to a tutorial section.
Unless you have extremely competent level design, I wouldn't even be looking for that kind of thing in a demo, because it's really hard to have exploration in such a short amount of time.
You say that, but every time a Metroidvania game demo comes out, people are like, I don't think it's a Metroidvania. It didn't show off any Metroidvania stuff. Every single time. Every single time.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of times that games have claimed to be Metroidvanias and then they weren't. So it's very important to try to avoid getting bait and switched, and then you need to kind of represent that in your demo as well.
Yeah.
So people know.
Or you could, Lone Fungus, where they released almost a full game's worth of content with the demo.
Yeah. Well, that was a Kickstarter beta. So.
And that's kind of what this is closer to a full... I don't know, I didn't notice that there was much of an intro. So far it looks like it's mostly a training hall type thing.
Yeah.
But I guess beta can mean a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have to have the entire narrative structure put in there yet.
Right.
Which is something I think we didn't quite emphasize enough when we were looking at the Mira demo. I think we may have brought it up, but I don't think we necessarily made that clear.
That it was a demo and wasn't expected to have a narrative?
I feel like, I don't know, I guess it just depends on what the purpose of your demo is supposed to be. If you're just trying to show off core gameplay mechanics, I guess a demo should be a summary of what you should expect from the game, because ultimately a demo is a marketing tool. And this, I think, applies to Kickstarters as well, unless you're actively just seeking playtesting feedback.
Right. Well, there's different types of demos. Like, Lone Fungus is obviously in a much later stage than a lot of these other games. So that's why it had, like, that demo took on that form.
Right, yeah, like
Nero is probably more of an alpha.
well,
I don't
it
think it
said
was even labeled
pre-alpha.
as. Yeah.
But the original Vernal Edge demo that I played, I think, did a little bit of a story beat to kind of show that off, and I think that that's a good way to handle it. It seems like when we talk about demos, we talk a lot about less about the game that's being demoed and more about the strategy of making demos. But again, it just depends on your audience, I suppose. I think you need to impress people.
Right. Well, it's also dependent on whether it's like a demo that's like, this is a backer demo, so it's for people who are already invested in the game. So it's not really like trying to convince you to buy it, because if you're getting this demo, you've already bought it.
Sarah's complaining that we haven't jumped into the scoring system yet. To tell you the truth, Atcero, we actually we're waiting for more people to jump in before we went into the main topic, which is what we do every week.
This is the warm-up.
This is the warm-up. It's also a good opportunity to ask us questions if you want to get us on a good tangent before we get started. Okay, we'll jump into our topic, which is scoring systems. Who wants to start? So, because I feel like when I get started, it's going to be me defending the scoring system that I'm using for over 180 reviews. So I don't know. I know that you have an opinion on it. Cauldrath, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
I guess I can say, like, the issues I have with a lot of scoring systems. The main one that I see is that people don't like using the entire score, like, range. Whereas, like, this is a terrible game, we're going to give it a 7 out of 10.
I agree that is an issue.
So I try to, like, whenever I do tier lists or scores, I try to have it so that it's like a bell curve, so that there's a few things at the very top and a few things at the very bottom, and then most things are clustered in the middle, and it's kind of balanced.
So I guess there's a question: is that let's take this out of the context of video games for a second. I completely agree with what you're saying, that people shouldn't be afraid to use the bottom and top of their scoring system. I think that the middle of it should still be good, I guess. But my question is, do you think it would be fair to apply that scoring system to other areas that we use scores for? For instance, grading. I know that some teachers do grade on a curve, but is this always fair?
Well, grading, like, at least in the U.S., like, at least when I was in grade school, it was like 65% was failing. So that is, like, most of the thing is at the bottom of the chart, but there is, like, a minimum standard that you need to maintain there, whereas games don't really have a, like, minimum standard that they need to meet to, like, I don't know, be considered a game.
I kind of wonder what that's what's driven the concept that anything below a 70 is not good for video games.
Absolutely.
We look at it like a school grading system. So with a school grading system, you might say that you're measuring how much of the knowledge you have retained from the class. And we are basically saying that if you retain 65% of the knowledge, then you're okay. Which, when you really think about that, that's almost scary.
Yeah.
Especially when you have professionals going into the field with their 70%.
Yeah, like, I've got the doctor that got 70% the whole way through.
So when I got my CPA license, my CFO at the time was like, "So what was your score?" And I told her, and she's like, "Oh, you overstudied. You don't need that score. You only need a 75." You have to be efficient about it. Because the CPA exam is pass fail, which is, most of the time in the field you're able to look things up anyway, so it's really not as big a deal as it might be in something like, I don't know, being a doctor where you have to make split second life or death decisions sometimes. I don't know. Doctors sure don't act that way. But
Yeah, I remember like the AP exams, like their scoring system, you need like a 50% to get a 5, which is the highest score you can get, and then you get like college credit because you got a 50% on it one exam.
The thing with AP exams is that my experience with them in high school is that a lot of them covered content I had never learned before. It's not like they're tailored for your class. It's a lot of general stuff that you kind of need to guess to figure out.
man, school tests have changed a lot since I went through. They were like
I probably did mine before you did yours.
That's most likely the case. Plus, I think you were probably in a very different state than I was. Arizona was testing some crazy, I think they called it AIM testing or whatever. It was a new standardized test for Arizona specifically, and it was causing huge controversy. I haven't
State testing is awful.
Yeah.
The way they score things, I actually have to look it up because I don't know. But with like the ACT exams, just 1 or 2 questions is a several point difference. Like going up to 36 being the highest, I think. Miss like 2 questions, you're lower than that.
Common Core at Atcero actually came after what they were testing here. So one year they were like, we're testing this new test system, so you're not going to actually, or this grade will not affect anything that you're doing, we're just testing the test. And so, okay, if you were given a test and you were told it wasn't going to affect anything that has to do with you, and that they were testing it for, future generations or whatever, what would you do with that test?
Hey, I would take the test.
You would take the test seriously? Well,
yeah.
90% of the school student base didn't think the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna like sit there racking my brain over something, but I, thoughtfully consider each question, I think.
I think I took it seriously, but most of my friends and everybody around me was just like, oh yeah, I actually answered things incorrectly on purpose to help the future generations not have this test. One person even argued it was his civic duty to it was a very political thing that I wasn't really involved in, as anything that happens becomes political, but it was, I don't know. But anyway, I think it's relevant to talk about different scoring systems when it comes to this topic of video games, but let's kind of bring it back to video games again. The problem I have with grading on a curve is that it can sometimes be unfair, because here's the thing, like if I did a top 10 Zelda games, I would probably put A Link to the Past on the bottom. But we're talking about in the context of Zelda games, and also Zelda games that I've played. Like I haven't played Wind Waker or Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword yet. So I have no idea whether or not those are at the bottom. But as soon as I say it's at the bottom, people go, oh my gosh, how come you hate this game so much? Exactly. It's Sarah's reaction is exactly what I hear every time. But it's because, you're looking at a bunch of great games, and it just happens to be the one that I like the least. Like, for instance, Castlevania Circle of the Moon is my least favorite of the Castlevania, or the Igavania style Castlevania games. That isn't to say that I dislike the game. It just happens to be on the bottom of the list as it stands. So I guess in order for a grading curve to seem fair to me, you would have to have a full population of everything available. Sarah says that we're okay with putting Trickle the Moon on the bottom. Most people are. I think I think the consensus is that Harmony of Distance should be on the bottom.
So at least, so in like grading people, I think that the two main things are to make sure that the test isn't too hard. Like if they accidentally make the test too hard, then it kind of auto adjusts for that, because making a test is kind of like not really a science.
Right.
And the other thing is they just don't want to fail an entire class, because then that makes them look bad.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's part of the reason why they do the bell or the curve. And yeah, I mean, there's an argument for that. The we don't want to look bad, I think, is a bad argument.
Well, it's a bad motive, but it's still like what they're probably trying to do.
I think you said something important there, though, is that even schools understand that scoring is not a science. There's a lot of factors and nuances that we don't necessarily have the ability to perceive because we're not omniscient. It's interesting that the clock just kind of stays in that room.
Not everyone has the mindset of the person who wrote the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration.
Okay, so I looked up this ACT score thing. So, reading test, it's 40 questions. A score of 40 is 36. A score of 37 is a 32. And, like, that is a significant difference, because colleges at least, like, look at those scores because they want to have a high median score for their students. Not that it's the most important thing, but consider like just how interpretive some questions on tests can be, especially with something like reading.
One of the problems I have with grading curves, though, is the old adage that you might have heard before: if you and your friend are running from a hungry bear, you don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than your friend.
Yeah.
Or trip your friend.
So are you suggesting that people should be tripping their friends when they're taking tests?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that from a game design perspective, when you create a scoring system like that,
it's a plus EV strategy.
Sabotage becomes a viable strategy. And that is not a strategy that you want to encourage. This area looks familiar. I think this was in the original demo.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a secret boss in the original demo, but then around here, but I forgot where it was. I think it was just like down here.
The structure here has changed just a little bit. I think it was actually on the right side of this bridge. Like as you're falling.
Oh yeah, and you need to like climb up.
I think so. But yeah, I don't know. It's so. I don't know. Do we want to jump into my scoring system now, or is there anything else we want to say just in general about scoring systems? I think another thing that's kind of frustrating about having a scoring system is that a lot of people want it to be mathematical and scientific, and I just think that that's impossible when it comes to rating games, because ultimately it boils down to I'm giving my opinion. And I think that the way I feel is legitimate, but it will not necessarily reflect how you will feel. I might be able to say things that you might relate to, but your experience with the game is going to vary wildly based on your skill level, your perception of the ideas and philosophies that the game presents, and all of those factors.
So I don't think it's impossible to have an objective scoring system. I just don't think that we are at that point yet.
Well, it's just like having so I think it's possible to have an objective scoring system for schooling. However, we're just individuals. Like, unless we had like some kind of hive mind set up or something, I don't know. There's got to be some way to measure it better that we just haven't figured out at this point. And the fact that we are not omniscient, I think, prevents us from creating that perfect scoring system.
Maybe. I
Well-
don't like scoring systems. I think they're a massive oversimplification of something you can just say in a 2-page review.
Here's the thing, though, is that nobody wants to read the 2-page review.
Just it's not that long. You don't have to write a 2-hour dissertation, video essay thing on a game. Just like people need to read things, but they're lazy and they won't. That makes me sad.
Yeah, the thing is, they won't. You can't make them, so you should like take that into consideration.
Yeah, so people look for just like, oh, this number will tell me how much I'll enjoy this game, and that's not something that is easily done.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it doesn't take into consideration their tastes.
right. Which is, So I agree with you, Master, that it is better to just read the review. I think the problem that everybody faces is that even on the internet, people don't even want to read paragraphs, much less a 2-page review. For a long time, I wanted to keep my reviews down to 5 paragraphs. That was kind of a limit that I set for myself, and I've kind of broken that limit ever since then. But you have to figure out how to summarize and yet contain all of the relevant information that would help them make a decision about the game. And why I think scoring systems are useful is because the more games that you read reviews for from the same person who is doing the score system, the more you understand what that number represents. And then if you're looking through 185 reviews, you can kind of base off of or you can look at the scores and kind of get an idea of how it might apply to you.
Yeah, like the best thing is to try to find a reviewer who has similar taste to you, and
Right.
then their scores will be more representative of how it works or how good it is for you. But theoretically, somebody could objectively create a score that you could interpret through the lens of your tastes, and then that would give you the information of how much you'd like the game, even if you don't have similar tastes to that reviewer.
So I don't think.
That
Go ahead.
Go on.
I'll let you go.
Okay. At that point, if you're making like such a complicated scoring system that it's objectively perfect in every way, just put that effort into making a review. Oh my god.
I was about to say is that this idea of an objectively perfect scoring system, I don't think it would be possible to do it as a single number. It would have to be like a list of 10 numbers or something in order for it to, and all those numbers would have to have relationships with each other and all that stuff. And like Master said, at that point, are you basically just doing the exact same thing you could do in a 5-paragraph essay?
The best thing to do, I think, is just like, slap on some numbers that kind of represent what you think about the game, and then don't give it any further thought because it's just not worth the effort. But it is fun sometimes to put way too much effort into something.
Sure. Well, that's what overanalysis is all about.
Yes.
Overanalysis is fun.
Here.
This is coming from the guy who likes the 2-hour essays on movies sometimes.
Oh, I have a 5-hour video queued up.
Yeah. I don't have time for those anymore. I used to be able to listen to them, but I can't anymore.
It'll take me like 3 weeks to watch it, but I will.
Also, I got a little distracted partway through that conversation because of Atcero's comment about hearing me laugh at her comments in the background. I like moved my head away from my microphone a little bit. So she couldn't hear me chuckle as bad. But anyway, So I think scoring systems can be useful. The problem is that people put too much or put more weight into them than they deserve. Like some companies, I guess they give bonuses to their employees based on the Metacritic score, or like EA, I've heard that about.
Yeah. That is a thing.
Which is especially bad because you can just review about Metacritic.
Well,
Good night.
This is referring specifically to critic reviews, which is ridiculous when you think about it, because not every critic is like... Okay, so now that we have a scoring system that we've aggregated together that apparently has a tie to people's livelihoods, how are we vetting what makes a legitimate critic?
Cue the Cuphead gameplay.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you don't have to know how to. You don't have to be good at video games to be able to review them.
I mean, everybody knows that I'm just some guy who started my own critiquing website. Do you call me a legitimate authority just because I make reviews and put scores on them? Like, is it that easy to become part of this standard that we're apparently creating for video games?
I think it's more just like an element of trust. Like, I trust your judgment when it comes to Metroidvanias more than pretty much any other reviewer, like that, like mainstream reviewers at least.
Oh, sure, but I mean, so obviously you know me at this point, right? And if you read my reviews, you can get that trust. But if I ended up on Metacritic, or let's pretend it's not me, if some Joe Schmo started up the JRPG review and started putting scores on Metacritic, would you like intrinsically trust that person's score without any additional information?
No.
No, you'd have to go and read the reviews for it to matter. So I just think it's just insane that EA would do that.
If someone's like writing reviews for a job, I trust them way less if someone's writing reviews as a hobby, because they could be getting paid to write a good review or something.
Yeah, there's always that suspicion as well. This is actually a problem in the video game industry in general, is that we don't really have professional standards at all. And in some ways it's great. And we've had a lot of great, really casual content makers out there. People like Game Grumps, which they're really just a bunch of guys having fun. And video games are about having fun, so I don't think that that's inappropriate per se. But we also don't really have any way of... There's no, I guess, academic side to video game critiquing at this point. Not in the same way that film and literature enjoys.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to put it without sounding like a conspiracy theorist.
Sure. Yes, and when you put weight on scores like that, then you without any kind of structure or protections, you end up with shady behavior. But then I guess I still don't believe that scoring systems are bad per se as a result of that. I just think that they are misattributed. Their value is misattributed.
Yeah. A little bit of a tangent, but have you ever considered just like the amount of randomness that could be present in someone's enjoyment of the game? Like maybe they didn't have their coffee that morning, or they died one too many times just from something avoidable that just soured their view of the game.
Oh, absolutely. I actually think that's a major contributing factor to the reason why we don't have a strong academic foundation for video games even 30 years into its existence. And I say 30 years, what has it been, 40 years? When did the Atari really pick up as a... I don't know, I'd have to look into the actual history of that. There's been arguments about what the first video game has been, but video games are unique in the sense that you have to actually play them. And that can create all kinds of X factors there in the person's experience.
like not even being able to finish the game because they couldn't beat a boss or something like that.
Oh yeah, or technical problems is also another issue.
Like, how do you... The equivalent would be someone who reviews books if it was too hard for them to read.
Gosh, has it been 40 years since video games have come around? I keep saying 30 years. It's like that meme that it's like 20 years ago was Final Fantasy IV. No, 20 years ago was Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, the NES came out in '85, I think it was.
Yeah, NES I think is really when video games kind of started it, at least in the United States, as a like as a popular art form, I should say. Sort of like how I would use Snow White and the Seven Dwarves as sort of the starting point in which cinema became a... Snow White and Wizard of Oz are like the first major films that kind of kickstarted cinema being a cultural norm.
Yeah, I got an Atari when like in '86, I think it was.
I think System was such
that
a
was
rip-off.
60, and I did play E.T. on it.
$60 for a system, or for a game that has about 5 minutes of interesting content.
Hey, you learn to stretch that content out.
I guess so. I guess if there's no other standard to base it on, you might be able to get away with it. But man, Nintendo really set new standards. Both Nintendo and Capcom and everybody else who was involved in the NES era that kind of really made those timeless games that still stand up today.
Yeah.
Atari does not hold up at all. I got the Atari collection. I was like, I'm gonna try these. There's a couple of them that are sort of fun. Like I like Defender well enough, but not the version that's on the Atari. Like the arcade versions were pretty good. I think that was the biggest problem with the Atari, is that it was just an inferior, even for the time, platform.
I mean, the NES was inferior to the arcade games as well. Like if you look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
It was, but it had experiences that still held up in spite of the fact that, technically speaking, they weren't as good as the arcade. Like the Mega Mans and the Castlevania 1s and the Marios.
Right.
Arcade or not, those still hold up. Now, of course, the Ninja Turtles game, like you said, I think they did a pretty good job with the NES version of the Ninja Turtles game, but it certainly wasn't the same experience by any means.
Yeah, well, they actually added a few levels to it, but yeah, it was obviously like graphically inferior.
Right. The Atari, it wasn't just graphically inferior. Like if you look at the Atari version of Pac-Man, it's almost a joke. In fact, that's one of the big scandals of the 80s that led to the video game crash. E.T. supposedly being the last one.
I've been quiet because that stuff's a bit ahead of my time. Played an Atari collection like on the PlayStation 2 or something.
I never had an Atari, and I knew people that had Ataris, but I never really played it as a kid. We did have... My dad was a pirate, though, and we had an Apple II GS with like hundreds of games that he had just gotten copies of, so I did experience a lot of the same kind of games, but it was also higher quality because it was like having a PC back then. Had a lot of really like close to arcade quality games available. I wouldn't say it was a rich thing.
Yeah, so I was playing the Atari on a black and white TV, so I didn't even know that it could do color.
Oh no. Most of those games didn't really have color anyway.
They were pretty monochromatic, but at least they had colors that weren't white. Like they could change what the one color it had was.
I don't know, I guess my family was decently well off, but for some reason we never had an Atari, so... But anyway, I digress. So, anyway, do we want to jump into my scoring system and my justification for it?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Okay, so my philosophy behind my scoring system is I don't, in my opinion, if it gets a 3 or higher, then it's made it as far as being a fun game. If it has less than that, then it's flawed in some way. But I try not to think of the score as being like if it has points, then it has good things about it. That's kind of the way I look at it. And the reason why my scores seem to be a little bit, I don't know, some people say that my scores are too high. I think my scores are lower than the average on Metacritic. Oh, I think I got distracted by Master's Hey Path of Exile thing. I was trying to... Is Path of Exile a crest-like? Is that what we're saying now?
No, a Steam notification popped up on the stream that someone was playing it.
Oh, somebody was playing Path of Exile, or... Oh, you mean during the video I wasn't really paying attention to the video. Yeah. That's funny. So I haven't run into that game. I keep looking for that 1 out of 5, and I still haven't run into that game that has nothing good about it. So it's hard for me to give it that score. What's that?
Even Bookbound Brigade.
Yeah, even Bookbound Brigade has good things about it. By the way, I'm thinking about doing a video review for Bookbound Brigade. I don't know if you heard that. Because everybody keeps asking me what my least favorite Metroidvania is. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to video review. I'm just going to show everybody what it is and then talk about that a little bit. So if a game is fun, it gets a 3. And if it's fun, it doesn't have anything like particularly frustrating about it, I guess. It stays engaging from start to finish. What my criteria for the 4 out of 5 is whether or not the game provides any kind of... I haven't come up with a good name for it, but I think I've mentioned it before. The 3 video game, I'm calling them values. Do you remember me talking about that in the past?
Maybe.
I think I remember you mentioning that you had a list of them, but I don't remember you saying what the list was.
Okay, so my 3 video game values, to define what I mean by values, it is what you can get out of a video game that will stick with you after you've played the game. Because in my opinion, entertainment that sticks with you is stronger than entertainment that is fleeting. Like a game that is addictive, that you spend a lot of time on, might pass the time and fulfill its value as entertainment, but a game that gives you something to think about or gives you some kind of skill to take out of it, even if it's just a nonsense skill like the ability to parry after coming out of grind, I count that as, something you're taking out of the game. And so I've kind of divided them into 3 different categories, and of what I think kind of comprehensively covers what video games can provide. So the first thing is challenge, I'm calling it challenge, which is going to be most of what you get out of a Metroidvania game. So if a game provides a good combat challenge, a good platforming challenge, a good strategic challenge, logical challenge in the case of like Baba Is You, that type of thing, then assuming that it's also engaging from start to finish, earns that 3 out of 5, then it can get that 4 out of 5. If it comes close to providing a challenge but somehow trips over itself somehow, and then of course this is all coming down to my opinion and judgment regardless of how I spin what my reasoning is.
Yeah, we discussed how challenge is subjective before.
Right. I have a lot of different ways that I look at challenge. Like with combat, is it fair? Does it telegraph its attacks well? Does it feel like it's more like I'm playing a slot machine? And yes, I do need to play Baba Is You. Those are the type of things that would prevent me from giving it that 4 out of 5 under the challenge score. And so like when I'm judging a game, that's what I look for. If it gets that, then it gets the 4 out of 5. The other two categories that a game that can bring value is I call it narrative is the second one, which is where the game is focused more on presenting an idea or philosophy or an intriguing story premise that sticks with you in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be challenging or the other category in order to achieve this. So I kind of look at that as a separate value that a video game can achieve. Oh, she's calling Baba as you as a 0 out of 10. So, like for instance, a game could have a low challenge rating in my judgment, but if it has a good narrative rating and it's not like horrendous to play as a result of the other aspects of it, then it can get a high score for me still. It can get that 4 out of 5 from that. And then the third category is social, which is where the game is conducive to creating a good social experience with your friends. And kind of how I judge that up or down is, I mean, obviously it helps if the game actually has multiplayer as a feature, but just having multiplayer isn't enough to just, you get a 4 out of 5 because you have multiplayer. It has to actually benefit the people playing in some way in order for the game itself to be rated well. Like we can have a conversation without playing any games at all. Is that a credit to the game that we were able to spend that time to each other, or are we just having fun spending time with each other, and the game was just kind of in the background? That type of thing. For instance, by most fighting games, if they're not like broken in some way, will get a 4 out of 5 from me just for the social factor, because fighting games have a tendency of getting the players into each other's heads, and I think that that's a relationship builder, and I think that there's value in that. So those are my 3 values. I've been talking too much. I'm going to pause for a minute. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess with the social thing, there are like things that you can do when you design a game to make it like better for discussing. So it isn't just like all up to the players to like do the social aspects of even single player games.
Yeah, actually, I would say that I would make the argument. And here's, again, all of these things are philosophies. I am not telling you how to interpret this. I think it's a very interesting way to create discussion. And when I brought this up before, somebody argued that Dark Souls has a high social score because of the way the lore is presented. It has created a community that loves talking about the lore and theorizing. And I think that there's a good argument for that.
Actually, I agree with that. Thought you were going to go in a different direction and say that like PvP invasions create a sense of community or something.
No. Although you could argue that has created a community as well. There are people who love Dark Souls 2 because apparently the PvP is their favorite of the bunch. I like how you did. You pulled a me just then. What happens if I jump off this cliff?
There's a lot of things in this game where it's like, I have no idea if I can continue this way.
Oh.
Because it's just like screen borders. And
sure.
in most Metroidvanias, you'd be able to like go in that direction.
Yeah. Something to think about in Metroidvania design.
Like there was a spot earlier where it was like there was some spikes and there was a gap between the spikes, and then I jumped into it like, oh, maybe there's a room down there. Nope, it's just a pit.
Don't you hate that? I also hate pits that look very much like pits, but they turn out to be something very special.
What about when it's in Super Metroid?
Does Super Metroid have pits like that? They usually lead somewhere, right?
It doesn't have any like death pits.
Yeah. Yeah, Super Metroid.
I mean, like, looks like a spike flower or something, but you jump in and it's a passage.
Yeah.
So on the subject, oh, go ahead.
That's like the opposite, where like there's a pit there, and it turns out it's just death. Whereas in Super Metroid, it looks like it's death, but it's actually a pit.
Yeah, I don't think there's any instant death in Super Metroid at all. So most things you can get into. That's actually part of the design philosophy of what makes Super Metroid so great as a Metroidvania.
Why do people have instant death in games? Nobody likes it.
That's a different subject. So the subject of social, I feel like the narrative could also play into that. Finding out the narrative of the game can be a social factor if it's designed correctly. And that's something that's also very uniquely video game. Like you can't get away with a movie that makes you, I don't know, find clues in the movie in order to figure out the story in the first place.
You can.
Is there a movie that exists like that? Like I feel like if it was actually successful, I would have heard of it, right? Maybe.
People love their like fan theories and stuff with game or with movies.
Sure.
That's pretty much the same thing.
Is it the same thing really though? Because I feel like in Dark Souls, that's like the point of the way the story is structured. I guess there are movies that are like that.
People would say like Inception or something, but that's like generic response, and I've never seen that movie. So,
Well, Inception did have a good thing to talk about in the ending, and yeah, I would say that that's. I guess it's a little bit different because I don't know. I mean, I guess people look at things in the background of movies all the time and read into it like crazy, and we were just talking about overanalysis earlier, and it's kind of fun to do that. So anyway, those are the 4 values they can get at the 4 out of 5. Going up from 4 out of 5 is completely arbitrary. It's factors like do the graphics hold up, or is there a consistency? Like if it achieves that challenge score or narrative or anything like that, I can get that 4 out of 5. But that 5 out of 5 is just a score for excellency. So I guess in my scoring philosophy, once it has that 4 out of 5, they're all kind of in the same category in the sense that they've made it to the category of what I would just call great. But when you hit that 5 out of 5, you're a standard setter. Like this is something that other games should look up to for inspiration in a way. Like for instance, I just gave Astalon a 5 out of 5 because I feel like it did its single screen style exploration with just so much variety for what you can explore so well that I think it deserves the score.
So the 4 to 5 is pretty arbitrary and extremely subjective.
Yes, that's me admitting that. Up to that point, though, I feel like I can make a better argument for that barrier between 3 and 4, and likewise with 2 and 3. If it gets below a 3, I usually have a good reason for it. For instance, I gave Mortal Manor a 2.5 out of 5. And I think after watching it, I think you two might agree with why I would do that. It was a very frustrating game.
Yeah.
Just the way it was constructed in a few different design decisions could alleviate that. Like just giving it Souls-like death mechanics would do a lot for that game, I think.
by the way, I love the sliding in this game.
Yeah, like whenever I find a ramp, I'm like, okay, I immediately need to do the stomp thing.
Those are fun things to do. And yeah, I mean, if you start digging into the details, you can make all kinds of arguments about things that would help a game get from a 2 to a 3, like just from a entertainment aspect. And I think things like that sliding really help push a game forward. I think something that every Metroidvania game has to address is alleviating the boredom of backtracking, and having fun movement abilities like that is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
I think this is something that Super Metroid does well as well. is that it has a lot of depth to its movement mechanics, and the better you get at it, the more stylish you can be as you move around. And then the speed boosting and shine sparking are all very fun to play with.
You really need the ability to be stylish when you're moving around.
Yeah,
So,
it's good, useful for Metroidvania games. You either need to be stylish, or there needs to be something else to keep it engaging, like things that are trying to kill you all the time, like La Mulana.
I mean, you're too busy trying to figure out what you're doing in La Milano to care.
Right. Right, and I think Astalon kind of has that same aspect too. You're just constantly looking at the edges of the screen and that type of thing. Coach kept comparing Astalon to La Mulana. I'm like, I don't really think they're in the same category because Astalon never really asks you to solve any riddles.
Well, the thing that he was bringing up is that it's single screen and that each screen has like a purpose to it, which is very much like a defining quality of La Mulana.
Yeah. I'd say the Barbarian and Astalon are kind of in the same, I don't know, subgenre, or what would you call that? It's a lot of similarities in their approach to level design. Except the Barbarian's definitely a lot more puzzle focused.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my justification for my scoring system. I think if it deserves a 4 out of 5, then it gets it. It's just how I feel about it. Sometimes I'll give scores. I try and take myself out of the equation as much as I can. I don't want to use the word unbiased or try and be unbiased because I don't think that's possible, but I also try and consider other people's viewpoints when I'm giving those scores. Like, for instance, I'll give a game a 4 out of 5 even if I didn't personally like it that much. I have to take into account what I consider preferences rather than things I can actually argue as being reasons.
Yeah, like I've made that tier list, and there were a couple of games on there that I felt like I liked less than the average person, so I like moved them up a tier or two, like Blasphemous.
Mm. Yeah, I know you don't like Blasphemous a lot.
Yeah.
The anti-parry.
Yeah.
I try to like mechanics. I guess I work really hard to try and understand why somebody might think something is fun. Like, if my initial impression of it is this is awful, I don't know. I guess I put my trust in the fact that the person who made this game is also a human being, and that there has to be a perspective that they're looking at this that I might be missing. And I've acquired tastes for some games doing that a few times. How's it going, Unknown Me Too? I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Well, honestly, the jumping in La Mulana was something I hated at first, and I understand why people hate that about La Mulana. But once I realized like how to manipulate it, I actually think it's fine. I'm not going to call it great, but I like it. I think it works for the game.
I think it works for most of the game. I think a lot of the boss fights were not designed well around it, at least when you're using melee attacks.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that the boss fights are probably where it still feels the weakest. But the boss fights in La Mulana are generally pretty simple anyway. Nothing necessarily wrong with simple combat if the game understands the limitations of its own mechanics, which I feel like La Mulana does a pretty decent job of. Assuming that you're used to the controls enough to know what your capabilities are. It can be pretty frustrating if you go into it with the expectations you might bring from a different game.
Yeah, I think that might have been like one of the main issues I had with Blasphemous, is that it was trying to be a different game than it was. Trying to be like a hard Dark Souls type game, and the parry just made it easy.
Made it too easy. Well, after playing Grime, I'm starting to feel. I feel like it's what Blasphemous should be, from a combat perspective. But also, if you don't like parrying, you're not going to like Grime. So it's hard to say.
So there's times that I like parrying. Like like one of the characters I play in Genshin Impact is Beidou, and one of her abilities is a parry, and it's actually pretty satisfying to use in that game. But the rest of the game's like pretty iframe based anyway, so it doesn't really break the game.
Well, I think you said that you preferred, or you don't seem to care as much about iframes when the game is in 3D.
Yeah, because most of the time it's like zoomed in, and so you can't really see the characters that well, like see spatially as well. So it's hard to like actually make good combat that doesn't use iframes or parries.
Yeah, I can make that argument, or I can see that argument. I feel like ESA probably does it the best, personally, from what I've played.
I think a big reason why Dark Souls gets away with parrying and not games like Blasphemous, though actually, I haven't played Blasphemous yet. Does Blasphemous have an instant parry?
It does.
Yeah.
I feel like instant parry is part of the problem, because if you're playing Dark Souls, you have to consider the timing of your parries in order to make them actually hit, because there's the delay between pressing the button and the parry, and there's different parry windows with different shields. But if you just have a button to instantly parry, it's a bit more mindless.
So
Yeah.
I think what Master means by instant parry on V2 is there are startup frames in Dark Souls before the parry actually has its parry window. Souls-like games in general, I think that's one of their big shticks, is the startup frames. Grime has instant parry for the most part. I think there might be a little bit of a startup, but Blasphemous is pretty instant.
Yeah, the other thing is whether you can cancel into the parry or not. So like Vigil, The Longest Night had both rolls and parries. At least when you're using the sword, you could parry, but you could cancel into the roll, but not into the parry.
I don't even remember there being a parry, but that's just me.
It was only for the sword.
Oh, okay. I didn't use the sword. I used the daggers for most of the game, which is very good, by the way. Vigil has very strange balance.
I felt like the entire point of the game was just to make you really overpowered.
Yeah.
And like it felt like the parry and dodge roll actually worked in that game because you were so overpowered that it just like felt like a natural part of the kit instead of being like this dominant option.
That's why part of why I think of Vigil as more of an Metroidvania style game than a Souls-like, which is what people like to call it. I don't know where they get Souls-like from. I guess if you just have a dodge with iframes, then you're a Souls-like. But we already had this conversation on a previous stream.
Yeah.
It bugs me for some reason. It's just ironic because I'm so liberal when it comes to the Metroidvania definition, but when it comes to Souls-like, I'm like, no, it's not a Souls-like.
I also find it funny how like we keep talking about like parries and dodge rolls and Dark Souls definitions like every single time.
Well, this game has parries and stuff. How did we get into
Basically Dark Souls.
How did we get into the subject of parries this time? We were talking about scoring systems.
I think like preferences for games that we like.
Oh yeah, preferences.
Like whether a game has good combat or not.
Whether that should be included in the score, yeah. So anyway, another criticism I get is that I score my games too high sometimes, but I've already kind of tried to explain why that happens. It's because I think it's because everything I do is a request from somebody, and if somebody requests a game, it's usually because they want to hear my take on a game they already like. I have one person who's tried to give me some troll reviews, and I'm going to do them. I just haven't gotten to them yet. But for the most part, people request games that they like. And as a result of that, it ends up being that I play good games, and the scores reflect that.
Or do you just not want to disappoint the people who asked for the review?
That's in the back of my mind, but if I don't like a game, I'm not going to give it a good score. Or if I don't think it's a good game, I'm not going to give it a good score. I don't feel like I have that bias affecting it, or at least, not consciously. I do really think about my arguments, though, when that happens, and I think that actually improves my reviews. When I feel
Well, this is the time that I finally got the style meter high enough that I've got the permanent hair change, which I don't even remember what it does, so I wasn't actually making use of it.
I think you might be a little bit faster. Could be my imagination.
In the Kickstarter demo, it has a screen where it tells you, what all the things do, including what this does. But I don't think it has it in this one.
So my lowest scored reviews are either it was a key given to me by a developer, and of course the developer is going to think their own game is good. Or it was at the beginning of when I started the whole Metroidvania review, and I didn't really have any requests to go off of, and I just would play random games that were in my library. Those would be the lower scored games so far. But we've had a few 2 out of 5s from this year, so I think all of them were keys, though.
But we need 1 out of 5s.
Yeah, I need to find that 1 out of 5. I have a couple that I'm suspicious about, but I don't want to name them because it's mean. I have to think about the fact that there are people behind these, and with indie games, I think about this occasionally, like Angry Video Game Nerd, he'll yell and scream and compare games to feces. They were from 30 years ago, usually made by a corporation, and I think that it's easy to deflect responsibility if you happen to be involved with those games, like what went wrong with them. But with an indie game, when it's made by one person, there's only one person that you're criticizing. And you have to be nice in that situation, because people who make games are very hopeful that they will be successful. And
just because someone made it doesn't mean they're a good person.
Okay, well, that's true,
Or talented.
but I can't make assumptions about that.
So now we're judging whether people are good people or not.
Yeah. I would rather not know about who the developer is when I'm reviewing a game, because I do not want that to even be a factor to even think about. But no, but I feel like when I'm reviewing a bad game, when I write the review, it's more important to talk about details, be very specific about what you think went wrong, to help them if they decide to take your opinion, and see if it helps them in some way to improve their games in the future. But yeah, there are some games that are pushed for just cash grabs. There's a couple of games out there that are definitely asset flips or whatever. There's a certain someone who does asset flips, though, that I think that most of their games are still passion projects. Or at least they seem to act that way on Twitter.
Well, I think I know who you're talking about, and you know how I review most of his games.
I need to sit down and just start reviewing those games, just to see. I'm just curious. I really like playing, as much as I complain about them. Okay, I like playing flawed games. I don't know if I like playing bad games. I don't think anybody likes playing bad games. But flawed games are interesting to me. Like a 2.5 out of 5 can sometimes be more interesting than a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I don't feel like these games do anything interesting. At least the two that I've played.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. There's some people out there that just, you don't know what's going on in their heads. Not necessarily this person specifically, because I'm sure that people are going to be able to guess if they're listening on who we're talking about. But
Like, Cellmaze seems to, like, at least kind of like the games, like, think that they're at least decent.
yeah. Well, Samice definitely appreciates creativity above all else.
Yeah, but I didn't find the games particularly creative either.
Mm-hmm.
They seem like they're just, like, by the numbers, except poorly done.
Well, it's probably good unknown B2 that you don't know who we're talking about, but we can talk about it in the Discord later. I don't know. The colorful, interesting people that you meet or hear about sometimes. But anyway, explanation finished. That is why my scoring system is the way it is, and why my scores are as high as they are on average. I think at some
Yeah, that was the top.
I think at some point I might do what Cauldrath did and make a tier list. But again, I don't necessarily disagree with that approach. It's the same reason why I don't do Game of the Years, is because I don't play every game that comes out in that year. And so using the year as a, I don't know, frame to judge like which games, or which was the best game that came out that year, it's difficult to say unless you played every game, you know?
Game of the Year is a shoddy marketing tool, not something actual reviewers should do.
Did we do Movie of the Year? I guess we do the Oscars. Does anybody take the Oscars seriously?
No. Well, probably.
The people
So you
said
think
no.
that the sub shouldn't do Metroidvania of the year?
I think it's fine if you do a vote, but it usually ends up being a popularity contest. Did
Yeah,
Ori
because-
2? Did Ori 2 win when Ori 2 came out?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
And Bloodstain won when Bloodstain came out?
Yeah, it's people vote for the game that they played,
Yes.
and the ones that they didn't play don't get votes because
Right.
nobody. Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong. That's why I'm completely transparent about it. I'm like, these are the top 10 games I played this year that I played. Like,
What are people gonna vote for this year? There's like a lot of games.
let me think. Metroid Dread's probably going to win. Probably hands down.
Oh yeah.
Hey, it could turn out to be a bad game.
I
So
don't-
like, if no other games came out this year, I think Astalon should win, but probably won't because not that many people played it.
Which is weird. Yeah, I think Ender Lilies, and I was actually really surprised at how popular Ender Lilies has been. That kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to blow up, but their marketing team's a genius. So, in hindsight, it makes sense. But I
I'd
think
agree with Under Lilies, just based on how I've seen random people talk about it.
Ender Lilies will probably be highly voted for. Metroid Dread most likely. What else is coming out this year? What's that game? The other game that's like Hollow Knight that's coming out in December.
Oh, Silk Song.
No,
Gross word.
it's like
Eterna Noctis.
Eterna Noctis. I'm glad or Eterna Noctis. How you pronounce that? Yeah, that's the other one that I think is probably going to. It's coming out in December though, so there might be a little issue with people actually having played it. But I think that'll be a candidate just because it's like Hollow Knight. That's my guess.
Axiom Verge 2 is supposed to come out this year.
Is it actually coming out this year? If it is, then that's definitely going to be on the list of popular options.
Could come out December 31st and still be voted the Metroidvania of the year. It's based on how people vote for these things.
We're switching
That's
to
the end of this one.
yeah, we're switching to Lone Fungus now, just to have some footage left for the last 20 minutes. So back to Lone Fungus.
Yeah. And
Oh,
another.
gosh. I wonder if Death's Gambit would be on that list. That one's also coming out. That's been hyped up pretty. Like the remake has been hyped up
Yeah.
decently well.
Would that be considered a new game though?
I would personally consider it a new game based on what I know.
Yeah, I mean, it might actually be Metroidvania now. That's what they're saying. Anyway, Ostelan's definitely my game of the year so far. That may change. I don't know. Grime's very good. I think it deserves to be on there. I don't know if it's my game of the year, but I like it. It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, the Facebook group has some like buzz on it.
I think it's good. I think that if it's getting positive feedback, I can totally understand it. Now I'm only like 2 hours into it, so for all I know, that changes. But it has a lot of really intriguing ideas that I think should be rewarded. And I think the combat is, I don't know, the way that they handled the parries in this game actually makes combat feel different, which is, I don't know, a surprise to me.
Yeah, I'll probably pick it up and try it this weekend.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in whether or not it convinces you that parrying in 2D is okay. Like for the first zone, it's very mundane and boring, but it kind of layers in more nuance to it. I'm not to spoil anything. I'll let you make your own judgments on it, but I really interested in whether or not that will be a opinion changer for you.
I'll probably still hate parries, but I'll play it anyway.
Well,
I feel like parries are like kind of a like emotional thing where like it feels good to parry something, but it isn't actually like very good gameplay.
yeah. See, Grime kind of, because it makes it such a central mechanic and it tutorializes it so heavily, I feel like they managed to pull off some new ways to look at it. But again, I'll let you play the game and see that on your own. I recommend Grime so far. We'll see what my final review is when I actually get through it. It may be Monday, maybe a couple weeks from now, but it'll be out at some point.
It may have a terrible final boss.
It's trending towards a 4.5 out of 5 right now.
Whoa.
So we'll see how it continues.
I feel like a lot of good games have come out, and
Yeah, it's been a great year.
I think the only Metroidvania I've played that's come out this year is Trash Quest.
Trash Quest is good. Short, but good. I want to play a mini Metroidvania that I can give a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason why I didn't with Trash Quest is because it felt like there could be more to it, and I don't like
Too
that
many.
feeling. What's that?
Too many.
Too many what?
Too many.
Oh, too many.
Too
Yes.
many a Metroidvania.
Two O's.
Two. I thought you said too many. I was like, too many what? What? Yes, too many is probably a way of putting it. I don't know. It's that point of satisfaction thing that I've talked about before. That I don't believe in games being too short or too long, because how do you judge that? I think it's more that whether or not the game hits its potential in a way that makes you feel like what you got was, you don't feel ripped off by it. And usually that's because a game presents ideas, and the reason why you would feel ripped off is because a game presents ideas that doesn't fully flesh out. I think a great example of this is Time Spinner, where they did nothing with their time freezing mechanic, or at least it wasn't an essential mechanic of the game. And so, in my opinion, that's the reason why that game feels so short to people, is because it feels like there should be more done with the time travel and time stopping.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, like they kind of just forgot it existed.
I think they wanted to make a Castlevania game, and I think it succeeds at that, but the whole game was built on the premise of this time travel.
Why have Castlevania when you can have time travel?
Well, I think it's your opinion that straying from Castlevania is generally a good idea. Luckily, that same year we had two other great examples of time manipulation based games, like the incredible Vision Soft Reset.
Yeah. That still no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, I need to video review that one. So I'm actually thinking about doing shorter 5-minute summary videos with no voices, because that's really the hardest part about doing any video content is recording in my house. As you probably heard in the background as we're talking now, it can be a little challenging sometimes. But I think I can do like text only summary videos and see how those get accepted. And if people like them, then I'll continue, or I'll make more of them. Vision Soft Reset deserves a full review, though.
Yeah. Especially since, like, it's so unknown.
That'll probably be like February or March next year at this point. Unfortunately, this year has been so busy that my schedule's pretty booked. But it deserves it. I think my biggest complaint about Vision Soft Reset is that the ending feels a little unsatisfying. Just a little bit. But after playing it twice, I think I've kind of come to accept it.
And also, it's really easy to get to the point where it's like, you get to the ending and you're like, oh, I just have to sit here and wait for like
Right.
20 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's that too. I don't know, there's aspects of the last parts of the game where I'm just like, I'm not gonna say it trips on itself. I think that it does fine. It feels like it could be a lot better. So that's why I got a 4 instead of a 4.5. That's or why I got a 4 instead of a 5.
I guess games typically struggle the most with just wrapping up.
Some games don't. I think some games nail the ending, and I think that's to their credit. Like Super Metroid, I think has one of the best endings in gaming history.
That's because it's the best game in history. It's not fair.
I guess that's true. We should probably not. It's like comparing every movie to Citizen Kane, even though I've never seen Citizen Kane and don't know whether or not it actually deserves all the hype that it gets. But I have a friend who's very adamant that it doesn't deserve any of the hype that it gets. But that's how opinions work.
I'd be curious to know how many people have actually seen Citizen Kane.
These days, I don't know. I'm sure every film student has.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, probably won't.
I'm interested in seeing it. I'm sure I'd appreciate it a lot more now after, spending 4 years criticizing things. I think
I'd watch it if I actually watched movies, but I don't.
That's part of the problem. Is like, who am I gonna watch it with? I don't watch movies by myself. I'm like, if I'm by myself, I'm gonna play a video game. It's just the way I think.
Maybe the three of us could just watch it on stream sometime.
I could. I always wondered about the legality of that stuff. Where are we gonna even get it? Is that on like Netflix or something?
Probably.
It might actually be public domain by now.
Do you think so? Somebody had to have. Well, I mean, it's not like this is the ironic thing about it is it's not one of those movies that they keep re-releasing all the time, like the Disney Vault and that stuff. Gosh, is Wizard of Oz public domain? I know that the story is, but is the movie public domain?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Disney kind of made it so that they keep their copyrights for ages. I like this mechanic. I think I mentioned that last time we were watching this. I like that you're able to scope out what you're going to go through before you do it, so it's not all just trial and error.
Yeah.
It is nuts.
I'm really excited for when this game comes out. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah, it's already a good game, I feel like.
Yeah. And I like the fact that it's like Hollow Knight, but actually, so Hollow Knight has platforming in it, but I wouldn't say platforming is its focus. This is like Hollow Knight, but the Hollow Knight, but the focus is platforming.
Yeah.
It's like the combat and the platforming were inverted.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. I don't know if it's fair to compare this to Hollow Knight because it's actually not that much like Hollow Knight, but
Well, we had to
It
compare
has-
something to Hollow Knight today.
yeah, that's the our Metroidvania podcast bingo right there. You have to have a Hollow Knight comparison.
Well, it does have directional attacks and poking.
We already compared something to Hollow Knight with Eternal Noctis, though.
Yeah, you just said that game that's like Hollow Knight. And I'm like, oh yeah, Eternal Noctis.
I only said that because that's what everybody thinks it looks like, and honestly, I don't know. You said you played the demo of that and you weren't impressed.
It had a boss that was literally impossible to beat.
That's not a good impression to put in your demo. And speaking of marketing for demos, guys, we're coming full circle. We started with this, and now we're coming to the end of the stream and talking about demo marketing.
I get the impression that Eterna Noctis is going to be one of those games that people hype up, and then on release it's like a 7 out of 10. According to, conventional like IGN, 7 out of 10, which means it may as well be in the trash.
Yeah,
Then people will just forget about it.
I think that is exactly what's going to happen with Eternal Noctis, but I don't know. I could be surprised.
I mean, I don't really know much about the game. That's the vibe I get.
Oh,
But-
Fist is another one that's coming out this year that may make a splash.
Well,
It's one of those games that's got lots of marketing behind it, and
yeah, it's high budget. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
If there's anything else to say about it.
I don't know. I have high hopes for anything that I play. Every game can swing both directions.
If I'm actually playing something, I'll have like hopes for it, but just observing things without playing them, maybe I'm a bit cynical.
This is like Path of Pain right here. Holy crud. How
I
about
feel like there's
spikes?
something you're supposed to be doing that you're not doing.
It's possible he's missing an ability upgrade that would make it a little
Yeah.
easier.
yeah, that is possible. But it is a precision platformer. Like, that's what it's like built around being. That was one of the concerns I had about it. But it seems like it's mostly confined to these challenge rooms, so it doesn't seem that bad.
It kind of reminds me of I Want to Be the Guy or watching I Want to Be the Guy.
Do you
Okay.
need to like dash cancel the upwards momentum on that one jump? You think?
I don't think you actually cancel upward momentum when you dash.
Okay, so subject to scoring systems, as long as we're still on the stream here. When do you think it's fair for a person to write a review and give it a score? Like at what point during the gameplay?
Oh, like, this is about how you have to beat every game that you...
That's my rule.
do.
That's my rule. I know that people disagree with it.
So I think there are definitely some cases where you can review something before you've completed it. Like, there was that one game that you couldn't complete because it, like, bugged out on you.
Right.
I think it's fair to review it at that point.
And I did review it at that point. I just didn't want to. I really wanted to actually beat it. The reason why I have that rule is because I played too many games where my mind has changed in the last third of the game. And some people would argue that's not good enough. Like the game needs to sell itself within the first, third of the game instead of the last third.
People are impatient.
But I don't know. There are some games out there where it's just the more time you spend with them, the better they get. And I think that it's fair to score those well, I guess. With the warning, of course, that is what people are getting themselves into. Set the right expectations. I think that's the most important thing to do in a review. Don't misrepresent what you're playing.
But I think there's some games that it's just like they aren't worth finishing, so you might as well give a review score to it at the point that you determine that it's not worth finishing.
Yeah. It's the gamble. Will it ever get better?
If it's such a bad game that you're quitting and you don't want to finish the game, and well, I'm saying you in particular, Q, because you really want to finish games. If you're struggling, then the average person probably would have quit hours ago.
Sure. Okay, so here's another reason why I would finish a game even in that scenario. The more time I spend with the game, the more easy it is for me to articulate exactly why I'm frustrated and I hate the game. Yeah, like I can. So it isn't just my goal to beat the game at that point. It's to really think about what mechanics are driving the problems. And I think it's helped my writing in some cases to push through in those circumstances. I'm trying to think of well, anyway, just go into any of my 2 out of 5 or lower reviews and you'll see the kind of language that I use for that. Oh gosh, one of my earlier reviews, I actually wrote a letter to the developer. I'm like, dude, you gotta stop this. Your games could be good, you just need to actually get better at this.
Jeez.
They'd been doing it for like 5 years by the time I played that game, or it was after 5 years of games that they had made, and I was just like, somebody needs to level with you. So do you actually get past this part before the end of the footage?
I believe I do.
Okay, well, we might have to stick around until you actually get this, because now I'm like really curious if you actually make it. The suspense is on.
I think this might be like I finished this and then I'm like, okay, have
I
I gotten 2 hours of footage yet? Yes, okay.
I have nights like that where I'm just like, this challenge was so draining, whether or not I like the game. See, can you kill these dragon things?
Yeah, it takes a lot of hits though.
I kind of
It's
want.
not really
No, it's not worth it.
Like, you don't get anything for doing it.
This is like the spike maze in ESA.
I love that maze.
I don't like that maze. That's where I quit ESA the first time, but it was after the credits, so I was able to. There are some people.
That's not fair for ESA.
There are some people
for
that
ESA, you need to have beaten the post game to be able to properly review it.
maybe, I don't know. I did a lot of the post game.
You didn't do all of it.
No, I didn't do all of it. I should probably rewrite my ESA review. That was also an early review. But what can you say, right? Gotta grow at some point. I think when I wrote ESA, I wasn't even like being completely serious about turning it into a website and everything at that point. So that was during the Curator days. And I think I had some good reviews from the Curator days, but I'd say that, what is it, 2019 was when I think 2019 forward is when the reviews really kind of picked up, in my opinion. When I actually started thinking that this is something I should do more of or take more seriously. I said it before when I started this whole thing. I was like, yeah, there's probably like 90 Metroidvanias on Steam. I'll get through them and then I'll just review them as they come out. Yeah. I think it was 2019 when I had gone through all 5 stages of denial and it hit acceptance. It's like I'm either going to quit or I'm going to get serious, and I decided to get serious.
As long as you play the good ones.
Yeah, I guess. The good ones are what keep me going, that's for sure. It's been a great couple of months, I have to say, between Astalon and Grime and Ender Lilies and all those games.
Okay, out of those 3, what would you recommend?
Astalon's definitely at the top. Oh my gosh, you're so close. You could smell it. You could smell the checkpoint.
He keeps he keeps dying on like the last set of spikes. Stop it.
So here's the thing about Astalon, though, is that it depends on what type of player you are. Not everybody's going to like Astalon because it's very exploration focused. I think you'd like Astalon, Master. I think if you're asking me what I would recommend to you, I'd say that Astalon's going to be the most likely candidate for what you would like the most.
I will remember that. And I will add Aslan to my wish list.
Yeah, I'd say that's very similar to Barbarian and some of the other ones. By the way, what did you think of Phoenotopia that you finished? Or do you want to say on stream?
I enjoy Phoenotopia. It's a pretty unique experience.
I didn't think Coach would dislike it, but I was actually kind of surprised he liked it as much as he did. He really seemed to like Phoenotopia, which is good.
I feel like I can never tell what Coach is gonna like because sometimes he'll just like gush about a game for 10 minutes, just unprompted, and it's like I didn't think you'd like that much.
I'm learning. I'm learning what his preferences are.
I think he's more focused on the way a game makes him feel than how it actually plays. So it kind of is a bit different criteria.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's more nuanced than that, but I don't know. Like, I really liked Inner Lilies, as everybody knows, and one of the things I liked about it was I felt that it does the narrative aspect of it really, really well, to the point which I almost want to make a video comparing Ender Lilies to Dark Souls to Hollow Knight.
Because they're all Souls-likes, right?
Right, because they're all Souls-likes, and at least as far as the stories are concerned. But I am a minority in that opinion, which is kind of awkward when you're the Metroidvania review.
We need to start reviewing reviewers.
We could. By the way, so what our idea for next time? So next week I think is Let's Play week, right?
Yes.
If we want to do next, so 2 weeks from now I have to cancel the stream because I'm going to be out of town. So next week we'll probably do the Let's Play, but at some point, one of our future reviews, we're going to watch some. But I wanted to rant about some bad boss fights and talk about what makes them bad. And so we're going to spoil some last bosses in some games that I played and talk about that. I think that'll be fun. How do you propose that we review reviewers, though? Should we watch Narel's video? And can we do that? I don't know what the legal ramifications are of streaming somebody else's video. I guess if we're talking over it the whole time, it's okay, right?
Yeah, I've seen plenty of things where like people will watch, they'll do like a reaction video to somebody else's video.
Yeah, if those are as prolific as they are, then we shouldn't have any problems.
I should probably stream the video over Discord or something. I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best way to approach that. I guess we could all just watch the video at the same time, just like ready, set, go. Because I want to make sure that we're on the same page as we're watching. Because streaming on Twitch, you're probably getting about a 10-second lag for what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do a just a video sharing website.
Yeah.
So then we can, all pause the same video.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. I actually don't think I've ever used anything like that, so. Yeah. But anyway, I think the next podcast will be talking about bad boss fights, I think. And next week being Let's Play week. Did you want to do that, Master? I guess we could talk about this after the stream, but just
God, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
Comment what you want, Master, on the Discord or on the YouTube version of this video. Comment what you would like to see Master play. He loves being tormented by whatever game it is, so pick something difficult.
Or annoying.
And then Master will be contractually obligated to play it. Probably not. So, I think that is it for tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.